Live from our studios here at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka, Accra. This is press conference live on Citi TV, where journalists gather to dissect and analyze the major press briefings and public engagements in the course of the week under review. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. In this edition, the mother of all press engagements and encounters in the country happened this week under review. The president met over 80 media men gathered from across the country to interrogate him on various issues that have come up with regards to his stewardship of the country for the past close to 3 years. Also, two significant bodies in terms of CSOs in the country this week released various ratings of the president's administration. Imani doing what they call a manifesto, rating the implementation of the president's promises as captured in the MPP's 2016 manifesto, scoring the government a total of 48.78%, which they term as satisfactory or satisfactory on the manifesto scale. Also, the CDD released a survey on the voter sentiments, and it says that 4 out of every 10 Ghanaians would not vote if elections were held this week. And finally, Justice Eni has been appointed by President Akufo-Addo to replace the retired or the about to retire Justice Sufaya Abnabuafwa Ekufu. We'll be looking at all of that issues and more. The show is live and interactive via the WhatsApp line 0550585832. You can join us via the Facebook stream. Drop your comment. We will read them for you. You can also join us via Twitter with the hashtag press conference, and we would do justice to the messages. We'll take a break here. When I come back, I'll introduce my guests and we'll zoom straight into the discussions and the lineup for today. Stay with us. And you're welcome back. We're still here on press conference on Citi TV. Joining me to the discussion, this edition, to my immediate left is Samiri Afe. Samiri Afe is a presidential correspondent, Citi FM, Citi TV, and the Dean of the Presidential Press Corps. You're welcome.
Big man.
Thank you very much, Duke. Next to him is Sedem Ofori. He is head of news planning and news gathering at Media General.
Yes.
You're welcome, Sedem.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And to my far left is editor of the Custodian newspaper, yes. Audu Mahama. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin by taking excerpts or snippets of what happened at the presidency this past Friday when the president met journalists from across the country. Of course, he started by apologizing. He had promised to do this twice in a year, but over the past 2 years, he's managed to do it only once. And he started by apologizing. And he touched on one of the defining moments of his presidency, or one of the things that has defined his presidency over the past 2 years. That's the banking sector crisis. And these were his thoughts on the banking sector crisis, a question which was posed by one of the members from my panel here, Samiri Afe.
We had no choice. We had, in fact, delayed in acting, would have been very much more condemned by history as being irresponsible in the face of that crisis than the interventions that we made. It is unfortunate. The banking crisis is the monies that are involved in trying to preserve the savings of 4.5 million Ghanaians, 15, 16 billion cedis. That money could have found better use. Don't let me use the word better use. But I could certainly imagine what it could have done for our roads, for our hospitals, for our schools, instead of it being sunk in trying to shore up.
So the president also reiterated the mantra that 2020 is the year of roads and had cause to talk about the bad nature of roads in the country despite various investment government has put into fixing these roads.
Many, many places as you're passing through the town, so they point to you. So even when your window is open, you can see them making the gesture. You see how So you then know that the unprecedented infrastructure development really didn't exist anywhere other than in the Green Book. But it didn't live on.
Of course, this was also an event for the president to talk about many of the gains that have been made by his government. He particularly zeroed in on the matter of economic growth.
9.3 deficit has now been turned into a 4.5 deficit. Like this year's budget has come in the wake of legislation that is capping by law the fiscal deficit of 5%. Fortunately, the management of the economy is in such a way that we're able to meet that statutory figure. Our economy is projected to be one of the fastest growing in the world. And over these last 3 years has been on an average growth.
So, and the final excerpts that we would bring you has got to do with our campaign, a campaign which started here about eating Ghana rice and patronizing made in Ghana goods. Well, we got about the biggest boost to that. The president has announced that from 1st January, all public institutions should purchase Ghana rice and buy made in Ghana products for all of their events and their activities. President Akufo-Addo.
All of us need to get involved in this drive towards self-sufficiency. We should all eat Ghanaian rice as a beginning for all of us. Each one of us in our homes, we make a conscious effort to tell our wives and cousins or whoever it is responsible to buy Ghana rice. That is what is happening in this place. It's happening in my house in Nima, and it is happening here. And I'm giving directions that by the 1st of January this year, all the state institutions are going to have to now live off Ghanaian produce and Ghanaian rice.
So that was President Akufo-Addo. Let's come to the studio. We'll get some more of that. Let's come to the studio now. Let me begin with you, Sammy. Let's look at the what happened on Friday. One, in terms of organization and the quality of questions that were asked. Let's look at those two parameters for you.
All right, thank you very much, Duke. In terms of organization, it was hurriedly organized. I knew of this on Wednesday. The president decided on Wednesday that he was going to meet the press because he had made a promise that he was going to meet them twice every year. But this year has been very tight with his schedule. So the decision was taken on Wednesday afternoon, that he was going to meet the press on Friday. Everybody was surprised or shocked, but he gives the orders, and those under him must certainly obey those orders. So certainly action started taking place. Telephone calls were made to invite the journalists who were supposed to be present. It was by invitation. It wasn't open to everyone. It was by invitation. So on Wednesday and Thursdays, the telephone calls were made, and then on Friday we had the event. Many have said that, or people around you had said that, why don't you push it to somewhere next week? And the information I had was that next week was going to be tight. He'll be traveling to Niger, also traveling to Nigeria for some other engagement. So he wanted to do it on Friday and then get it off his chest and then see the way forward. In terms of the questioning, I felt this particular encounter was better compared to last year in terms of the level of questioning. You remember after last year's encounter on social media, a lot of people were attacking and insulting us for asking non-relevant questions. But this time around, I felt the quality of questions and the guys who asked those questions were big up to the standard. And from reaction from social media and personal conversation with a few people, I realized that from what they are saying, it's better compared to last year. A lot of people have praised the kind of question they asked because many people knew or thought that it was going to be the usual praise singing. Mr. President, you have a nice shirt. What keeps you awake? Why do we have a lot of foreigners coming to the country? But this time we didn't see or we didn't
Mr.
hear.
President, nice shirt keep.
Well,
Mr. President, nice shirt.
But this time we had the journalists asking the most relevant questions on the minds of a lot of people in the country. I personally asked the question about the banking crisis, and right after that, I got like 4 messages from people I don't know, telling me that indeed I've asked the question of a lot of people who were affected by the banking crisis, and they thought that was exactly what they were expecting. Other colleagues who asked about, I think it was Adele who asked the question about the ambulances parked at the forecourt of. Yeah, right after it, he got a call from a nurse somewhere in the northern region, thanking him for asking the president.
The answer to that question has particularly kicked up a storm on social media.
Yeah, I understand.
Especially for people who disagree with the president's.
I understand people are not happy with their response.
Hashtag release the ambulances.
But I thought the answer the president gave was the best. We live in Ghana where you go give one side and you leave the other side, you'll be accused of discrimination.
Really?
So I thought, okay, he said, I know. Well, he says, end of the year, we have all the 300 coming. Every constituency is going to get one. The rest will be given out to other or most important facilities. So I thought that particular answer was good. But this year, I believe the encounter was good. The questions asked were very, very important and was the question on the minds of a lot of Ghanaians.
Any low points before I move
on? Yes, personally, I felt the session where the president must speak for 30, 45 minutes before the questions are asked, I think we should scrap that particular one. The journalists are there to ask the president the questions. The presentation made by the president before the question and answer, he answers a lot of the questions the journalists are going to ask. If you say it's a media encounter, come and sit down.
That's the essence of it, to shut a lot of them down before. Because for me personally, there was a question that was really, a question which was really on my mind was about the referendum and how democratic it was for the president to call off the referendum when he was expecting the vote to go one way. And he answered that question. He answered that way. A lot
of my colleagues were also, gearing up to ask that particular question. And when he answered that, and on the issue of one district, one factory, a lot of colleagues too were also eager to ask the president that particular question. And he also answered those questions in his presentation.
And Panelist.
And I thought that if it's a press encounter, come and sit down, a few introductory remarks, less than 5 minutes, and let the questions flow.
Okay, let me come to you, Sedem. I'll ask about organization questions, your high points and your low points.
Well, pretty much in agreement with my brother. I think the notice was quite short and sudden, but nonetheless it came. Organization. Invitations were given by media institution, was one of those that got invitations, but consecutively for the last 3 such encounters, we've never been given the opportunity to ask a question, and I don't know why.
This year nobody from...
Yes, this year, twice last year, not a single one the year before. So,
wow.
You wonder why you are given the invitation. You need to come and sit through and listen to a lecture, try to convince us about what you've done. Point is that everywhere you've gone to, we have been the ones there to cover it. So we need no sermons about what you've accomplished. But sadly, a good chunk of the time was spent by the president recounting his own achievements, which in my view was totally unnecessary because the occasion really was to afford us who are press people on behalf of the Ghanaian populace to ask you questions. So that sort of wasted the time. Do I have to wait for you to ask me about the low points? Or should I just continue?
No, continue.
So that for me was unfortunate. He apologized that he was unable to meet us twice. I think even in other, if we are learning from best practice, from advanced democracies, even, and I say even deliberately, Donald Trump would make it a point every morning to move to the press on his presidential lawn every morning before he sets out to do his work, to answer questions from journalists pertaining to current affairs. It is his practice. And I find that
even
really
though
laudable.
He denies some people CNN fake news.
But CNN is there. He may call them fake news, etc., but they at least have an opportunity
Sometimes
to
he decides not to take the questions at all.
And for 10 to 15 minutes, he would stand on his feet and take questions. Sometimes the questions are even yelled at him, and he picks them up and he gives an answer. You may not be satisfied, but at least he gives you an opportunity to do so. I don't know how busy the president's schedule is, such that meeting the press or addressing the press, even twice, the whole year, would be such a big deal that you can only do one. And even the one that you give us, you spend half the time.
And another thing that people criticize also is the fact that, and this one is not only with President Akufo-Addo, almost all our presidents, they find it easier granting interviews to the foreign news outlets.
If they got an opportunity to speak to BBC.
I can't remember the last time our president sat down with that was when he had to explain the number of ministers.
2016, the
number of
2016
ministers.
elections.
Oh, 2017.
No, there was a time I think he also
met three journalists.
Michael Saka at the BBC.
Yes,
where he had to explain where the funding would come from.
That was when he was in opposition.
Yes, that was
before 2012 election.
But with Ghanaian journalists sit down, interview the president. The last time was in 2017 when he met, I think, from Mumin from GBC, then Kobi Asma from Graphic, and then another journalist.
So I think Daily Guide.
There were three journalists who sat
down
to
explain the size of his government.
Yeah. That's the last time we had the president taking a one-on-one interview.
Yeah, so we would want more. We would want more because we don't, ahead of a right to information bill where the control of information is strongly within the hands of the ruling elite. We would want to have more access to the president and to key members of his government to answer questions on their stewardship. But even that aside, I also think that there were a few opportunities for the president to react to very important issues, and I don't know whether to call it a tragic failure of judgment, but the answers that were given, they seemed one-diversionary, and when those sort of answers come from the president, one gets the sense that he really hasn't got a good answer. One was on the question of fighting corruption. I think one journalist asked that, look, even now, some of our development partners and foreign agencies in the country have had cause to complain about the spate of corruption in the country and what the president was doing about it. I think his question answer was that some 25 members of the erstwhile administration were being prosecuted, but things have to go through the mail, the due process. I don't think the question was, it is true, but the question really also has to bother with your administration. I think those foreign leaders and agencies who were speaking were not speaking about corruption from the previous or erstwhile administration. We're talking about what was happening now.
But you also mentioned how investigations are being conducted.
I'll get to which every president has said, which president in times past has not, even all the way down to the late President Atta Mills. He said due process. Everybody has had cause to do that.
But how else would you have things being done rather than we're a country that subscribes to the rule of law and the use of courts and due process and all of that?
We don't discount the procedure that needs to be taken to fight corruption. But I think that if you are relying on courts as the primary instrument for fighting corruption, you lost the fight even before it came, because things get to the courts. Things get to the courts after the fact. And for a country that is scrounging to get resources for development, I think that our focus will more be on the preventives. And I think preventive is where the leadership of the country comes into play. The president needs to demonstrate by his own actions. And I think that when he started, President Kufuor, when he started his administration, was showing that. He needs to demonstrate more that he won't even tolerate corruption on any level. And I say that he started off that way because even at the slightest sound of corruption, he would institute investigations to the matter, and even before they came up with their results, you realize that you issue a statement and say that this person should step aside. He demonstrated that.
But that's been going on. Has this
recently? I disagree.
He was asked to resign. Investigations are currently ongoing.
The former energy minister, PPA, all those investigations are ongoing. I mean, it's one of the. Before you realize,
when you
have asked to step aside. Charles Bishop.
Yes, but even stepping aside for me is problematic. When there are colossal sums of money that have been lost, either through pilfering or whatever activity there was of whichever individual was there, you don't tell me to step aside and go enjoy my loot.
But these are allegations.
These are not allegations. No,
the allegations on
these are. There are real instances of foul play. And I don't think that the question is just, we are setting up a committee to look into this matter. Often it's a committee that is constituted of the executive, of some of the individuals themselves, investigating themselves. Pretty much like what happened with the Bank of Ghana, speaking of the collapse of the financial institutions. But there are real instances. I've had calls on this program to point to the case of Aisha Wan. When Aisha Wan had to be taken out of the country speedily, and the excuse given us is that we're protecting the international relationship that we have with China.
It's something he has apologized for.
It was a mistake. Well, on hindsight, he realized it was a mistake.
The board president to admit such a mistake.
And you are happy that he takes the bold decision to... Isn't that the least standard you can expect of a president? You are here loudly for saying it's a mistake. No, it's not enough. For a country that is borrowing so much just to fix roads, to provide toilets and such basic facilities, just a mistake is not enough for me. For a country that has ambulances sitting there waiting to be distributed to people on a ceremony, it is not enough to say that you're sorry. And there are so many such instances. Okay. I expect more, especially for him.
So for the answers were not inspiring
they were
at all.
not just inspiring, but they were diversionary. One, especially the one where he resorts to talking about some 25 individuals of the S1 administration who were on investigation. I thought that was diversionary. It's really bad. We are coming out of a PDS. A power agreement in which the government itself says that fraud was perpetuated against it. This is admission, this is a statement of the government itself, that some private individuals, through coalition, have perpetuated fraud against the government. Not a single individual has to speak. When a minister says it,
it was a minister.
From where I said, I know
that was not a government position. It was a minister who made it.
Now here we are saying that a minister made.
It was
These people serve at the pleasure of the president, and when they speak, I say that those are statements.
But there was a main statement from the
Excuse
government.
me. But the Ministry of Information, yes, it is that statement in which we claim that the fraud of the government. Go back to that statement.
That statement did not say it was fraud.
Now, here we are, and I'm sure I had not less than 2 interviews by the minister and others who were related to him that the process was tainted by fraud. And if you read the Derry Commission, I'm surprised that you're talking like this. If you read the Derry Commission's report, when they traveled all the way to go and see Al Quds and a number of people to ask them questions, what was the outcome of it? It was littered with fraud from beginning to end.
It was based on that government terminated this.
My point is that I don't care what you admit. My point is this. That is, my point is not whether you admit or not.
But it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Well, although I think we had more than enough information pointing to the fact that this was problematic, and we sidestepped it and allowed this to happen. If we're in a proper democracy, you would expect that the president would have taken swift action against those individuals who allowed this to happen in the first place. In fact, especially that we don't have the moral compulsion to resign when we know that we've caused the publicity this much loss. I think it's a disappointment. So I honestly, for me, I expected much more from the presidential encounter. I thought that we're going to have more direct, bold, straight to the point answers. That didn't happen, and that for me really was unfortunate. And even the answer on the ambulances. I mean, okay, why don't we construct all roads in every constituency at the same time? I mean, if it's a question of bias, every road you're going to construct at the same time. Every clinic you're going to open, make sure that every community across Ghana also has the same at the same time. Everything, every public good that you're going to allocate, make sure every community has it at the same time. Otherwise, you're causing bias.
We know how
challenging that answer could be.
Is. You know,
please relax.
You know very well. You know how
I'm speaking directly to a matter. I'm speaking to facts. Challenge me on the basis of facts. If the excuse for not distributing ambulances to the hospitals, the areas that need them, and holding them somewhere, sitting down, and the reason is that if we were to give to others and not apply to the other parties, it would be a question of bias. I'm saying that if we are so sensitive about bias, then perhaps we should spread it across also in every social good that government is distributing. Like, who doesn't deserve roads? Which constituency or community doesn't deserve better roads? Or deserve police stations? Or deserve clinics and hospitals? Why don't we hold on to everybody? When we get the money to study for everybody, we begin.
We don't have the resources.
This is the reason why I'm saying that answer was unfortunate. It was unfortunate, given that for every single moment that these ambulances don't arrive in the communities that need them, lives are being lost. How much value do you put on a human life? How much value do you put on a human life? Even if these ambulances were distributed, I beg to differ, that would be enough. It wouldn't even be enough. It would be a drop in the ocean, much less to say we're waiting for everyone, for another consignment to arrive before we begin distribution. It's really unfortunate. I would have expected more.
In about 2 weeks.
You said just about 2 weeks, so people are dying. Just. What is this thing about us as journalists nowadays? Okay. Just.
All right.
2 weeks. Do you know how long they've been sitting on the lawns? You're talking even 2 weeks more. You know how long they came into this country?
Yeah.
How many lives may have been lost? All this while we're waiting to make a ceremony of the distribution. Just 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll take a break here. When I come back, we'll still continue with this discussion on the presidential media encounter and other matters lined up. You're welcome back. This is Press Conference right here on Citi TV. Before we went on that break, we're discussing fallout from the presidential media encounter. Still having in studio Same, Sedem, and Addo. Sammy and Sedem have had their takes. I'll now come to Audu. Same issues, organizations, quality of questions, your high points and your low points. President's meeting with the journalists on Friday.
Duke, thank you. Some of us didn't have the opportunity to attend the program, but watching the program on TV, I thought it was an improvement over last year.
Yeah.
The questions were direct, they were contextual, and I think that the journalists also had opportunity to ask more questions than last year.
Yeah.
In that sense, I would say it's an improvement over last year. And coming to the main questions answered by the president, I think the president was actually on top of his game this time around. He answered all the questions himself. Unlike last year, some of the questions had to be deferred to ministers of state. This time around, he stood on his ground and answered all the questions. And I think most of the questions were well answered. And if you look at the rating by Media Foundation for West Africa, I think they rated President very high. Unlike last year, where they thought he was not on top of
they described it as the worst.
As the worst. This year, Media Foundation for West Africa rated President very high. And I think I agree with them that he answered the questions. Unlike what my brother is saying, I thought he did very well. When you come to the issue of ambulances, we live in a country where if you're a politician, you understand why the president answered the question the way he did. Look, you give ambulances to a nearby town like Nandom. I come from Lambusii in the Upper West region. You give ambulances to Nandom, people of Nandom, and people of Lambusii will demonstrate. They will demonstrate heavily and ask you why you gave Nandom and didn't give them. You give Lambusii. So if you are a president and you look at the political terrain and see what is happening, you will answer the question the way the president did. So if my brother says that people are dying, people are dying. That may be true, but how, when the ambulances were not there, how were we coping? I know we can check all these things, but it is very important that when you are giving these ambulances out, we should look at what it will create, the problems it will create. It's very important.
So you are saying that human life is of no value?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I am saying that. I have not said that. I have not said that. In the first place, no, that's not what I'm saying. In the first place, so far as the decision,
I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
In the first place,
because people will agitate, people should die.
I've not said that. I've not said that.
Political experience.
I'm talking of context.
Precedence.
No, I've not said that.
The value of human life.
What I'm saying is, it is even the government, this government, that took the decision to import this in any way. If they did not see the essence
of them have been imported and that they are still grounded because investigations.
Did you see them? The trotros that were imported.
Oh, so they are trotros now.
I personally saw they were not fit for purpose. Did you see them?
Currently, when people die and fall on the street, where do we put them? In car boots.
Oh,
where do we put them? To convey them to hospital.
My goodness. Those ones, you didn't see those things. But
if you make those comparisons...
I am saying that it is this government. I am saying that in the first place, it is this administration that took the decision that lives are important. And therefore, we are going to bring over 370 ambulances for this country.
375
for distribution.
For every constituency
we'll get one.
And then the bigger health facilities
will be given. So that is the first thing. Identifying that ambulances are very important. And as we said, they think the ambulances are here anyway, and the president has just given how many months, how many weeks for the rest to come. And we'll get them. And everybody will get them. We'll have our ambulances in all our constituencies. We'll have peace in this country, and everybody will be happy. And that's what we should be looking at.
Okay. All right. So,
and then in terms of, as I said, in terms of the questions, he was talking about the low point. Specifically, we were looking at the referendum. Which one did you say?
You mentioned, you said the 1 hour should be scrapped.
The 1 hour.
The one hour for talking.
The presentation.
Yes, my point is that the time for president to give out what he wants Ghanaians to hear is often too long. If you want to have media encounter, you should give the opportunity for journalists to ask more questions. And that is very important. And for me, that is a low point.
Okay. So we'll move away from the discussions concerning the presidential media encounter, and I'll move on to two surveys that came up this week. The one done by Imani Africa, assessing the over 510 promises that were made by the MPP in 2016. According to them, over 150 have been fully fulfilled, 220 are at various stages of fulfillment, and there are over 140 that have not been touched at all. Yes, so based on the assessment that they did, the president and the government scored 48.78%, and on their scale, that is satisfactory. So we'll take a steps of that report.
At the end of the day, the overall performance of the NPP, based on their promises that we have assessed, was a score of 48.78%, signifying a satisfactory progress. So they've made progress in implementing the promises, but this progress has been weak, or it's satisfactory, which also implies that out of the 510 promises that they made or gave out to Ghanaians, they've been able to implement 48.78. That does also mean that they've been able to implement 48.78 totally.
The polls has never changed. The only poll that matters is the poll on the 7th of December. That's the only poll that matters. I'm not saying that when people do polling, you then just rubbish it. No, that's not my view. You have to look at it, take it into account, analyze it, and see for yourself what is being said. But we know of situations, there are lots of people did not predict my being here. There were polls that went to say that I couldn't be here. I would never be here. I'm here. You then have to worry. You have to worry yourself about one touch, no touch, whatever. But no, I'm not discouraged. It's important for me. What is important is my program and the work that I'm carrying out, because I believe it is beneficial for the people of Ghana. And then when the time comes for the Ghanaian people to comment on it, I'm optimistic and go forward to say that I'm confident that it will be a good comment that they will make on it on the 7th of December next year.
So that's the president's comment responding to the Afrobarometer survey, which said that 4 out of every 10 Ghanaians would not vote if the elections were held today. His approval ratings on the Afrobarometer has dropped also from 2017. Imani is also scoring him 48.78% there. The Imani score, actually, to give you some just few steps, was done as an output-based performance scale. It was based on economy, human capital, investment, that's education and health, infrastructure, governance, and the social sector. On the economy, the government scored 54.35% for fulfilling. There were some 87 promises under general economy, 54 under agriculture, and 21 under tourism. A total of 41 promises have been fully implemented, 101 partially implemented, and 20 not initiated at all. And overall, some of them under economy include abolish 1% special import levy, abolish 17.5% NHI, and all the taxes that have been abolished, achieve double-digit GDP growth for the next 4 years. This has not been achieved. Savings from the reduction of interest rates paid on the country's debt stock. The debt stock is something that the country is still battling, so it has not been fulfilled. Facilitate the passage of the consumer protection law that has not been initiated, and all of the agriculture, some of them that has been fulfilled. Ensure that farming inputs are readily available within farming communities at affordable price. The fertilizer program is ongoing. Reintroduce compensation payments under the cocoa disease control program. An initial payment grant of 552.96 million has been released. Yes, so all of this. So the scale goes on and on and on and on and on. Let me begin with you, Sedemo, on this call. The work that has been done by Imani,
yes,
and the output-based performance that has been put out there, vis-a-vis the president's own comments,
yes,
on Friday against what has been done. How do you read in between the lines?
Well,
against the backdrop of Afrobarometer, that 4 out of 10 Ghanaians will not vote. 40%, that's
even
some
43, actually.
Yes,
put it together,
42%.
A good number of them claim that, one, they were undecided. I think about 19%.
That's 12%. Undecided 12%.
Then 12 said they would not vote. Those who said they would not vote. Others also said that they were not ready to give an answer.
Yes.
And which is understandable. I mean, in respect of the
Afrobarometer,
Afrobarometer,
certain level of despondency.
It does not necessarily, because if you look at the trend, that has always been the case. In fact, in the last election, communities...
Some people even wait the last minute before they make up their minds.
There are communities where people put up signposts and say, no road, no votes. They all voted. They didn't get the votes. So if you live in Ghana, you understand how the society works. You would have to put this data in context. We have about a year to the elections. It's an awfully long time. And I think this, if you take the Afrobarometer, for example, it's claimed if elections were to be done tomorrow in terms of after the issuance of this report, in 24 hours, if elections were to be done, that is a whole year before the elections come. What would be your reaction? So we must put it in context. I'm a bit skeptical about polls.
Okay.
The Afrobarometer, I think the sample size was 1,200.
No, 2,000.
The first round, 1,400. Well, it's incriminated. I think it's about in 7 rounds.
It was 2,486 or so.
2,400, but initial 1,200. If you look at that weighted against the larger population, 40 million of 8 voters, that is, to say it's even a drop in the pan, it's still an exaggeration. So I look at this within that context. And we have a history of polls in this country. I'm particularly expectant of that of the Economic Intelligence Unit. They somehow
get it right.
Yeah, they I don't know how they do it, but somehow they get as close to the outcome as possible consistently.
If that is anything to go by, then they have already predicted that this government will win another time.
Well, they've issued one that came in, I think.
That was earlier this year.
That's 2 months ago.
Earlier this year.
Yes, there's always a caution. But that of the Afrobarometer, I think that putting it in context of time, there's an awful lot of time for a government in power in particular, which controls a vast amount of resources, and you know how already I told that we're going to see a lot of roads being done in the coming year. Who knows if that may bear implications on how people vote. I was a bit surprised, though, about the popularity of government in the newly created regions, if the poll is anything to go by. And I say so because the sample size is quite slim. But if the opposition party is more popular, I would have thought that if you created a new region...
I think they improved in the northern sector, if you look at the polls.
Yes, but if you look at the 6 additional regions, the vast majority of them were paid the polls. The opposition NDC party was more popular, or at least people view them more favorably. And that's the bit that, for me, surprises me, because one would have thought that the creation of the regions, given the fanfare...
It's just one dimension.
One
dimension in the whole election mix.
The fanfare that came with it, well, you don't take it for granted.
Yeah, of course.
Because people have a free will to decide on what matters, which is why I'll come back to the money issue on. Beyond looking at data, 150 promises, there are those which will be weightier for the average person than not all 150, not all of them. Yet, meanwhile, in doing the evaluation, you score them the same amount of weight.
The president scored the government for 72%.
Well, he said that per his data, they have accomplished 72% of what they set out to go and achieve. They think they've done 72% of it, contrary to the 48% that Imani gave them. But still on the Afrobarometer, the point is that there's a lot of time. But I'm particularly surprised that the NDC or the opposition party is so popular in areas which one thought... the fanfare that we made of the creation of the new regions...
I'm not particularly sure about this.
Let me just land. One would have thought that those would have been areas where there will be no debate even about where government starts. But back to Imani. There are 2 issues that that boggle my mind when it comes to... the issue of the Imani report. One is... as I mentioned earlier on, is the weight you attach to the promises.
Yes.
There are 150 or so promises. 510 promises in the manifesto, and they say government has accomplished only 150 out of the 510. But for me as a Ghanaian,
but there's also a
if we were to go on the streets,
some economy has, I think, 25%. Another part has economy is 50% or so. Then there's 25%.
The weight.
Yes, so it's weighted. It's not all flat.
Okay, but you see, the question of economy is a dubious one. Because where do we situate access to education?
That's under social. That's under health. That's under human capital investment.
Human capital investment, but it has a direct correlation on the economic well-being of the people.
Wow.
People who hitherto wouldn't have come from an environment where money would have been available to put them in schools are now in school.
Yeah.
So when you disaggregate them from the economy and say that is human capital development, etc., for me, there's a nebulous space. There's a space, there's a delink, because they are connected. The reason why you're having so much massive enrollment is that people who hitherto wouldn't have had the resources to be able to attend school, now government has taken over that burden and is putting them in school. How do you separate these two? I think if you're talking of economy, then 50% should have, that weight of assessment also should have gone to access to education, access to social amenities, etc. But there's also the point where, I think on page 11 or so of the report, where they themselves admit that, look, when it comes to continuing projects, projects that were initiated by the previous administration that are being continued, it was very difficult to score. And at that point, they had to rely on a certain level of subjectivity. I wonder, for a country that cries so much about successive governments abandoning projects that have been initiated by their predecessors, I would have thought that a lot of weight would have gone onto those also. Okay. I'm a bit skeptical about polls, especially when they are so far off from the elections. From the election,
all right.
know. So
let me.
I would say that for me, I don't think they reflect the reality on the ground.
I will do
now. Duke, polls, no matter how imperfect they are pointers for political actors to act on. Now, if you look at the Afrobarometer, if I were NDC, I would be worried. Why? You realize that in 2017, MPP or Akufo-Addo administration was at 54, so they dropped to 35. NDC was 22. 2 years on, they are still at 22. If you watch, they are 20. In fact, 2008, they moved from 2008 from 23 to 22 in 2017. Just one, they dropped and move again and maintain the 22. If government is in power and is dropping, its rating is dropping, one will expect that what they are losing will be absorbed by the opposition.
Yeah. But those ones are moving and they are moving to
and they are moving to, they are becoming undecided. It means that even though they are losing confidence in the ruling or governing party, they don't have confidence in the opposition party.
Or they are undecided.
They are undecided.
There are two different things.
No, but the number of
what
people
I'm saying is that
when I say I'm undecided, doesn't mean I have confidence.
What I'm saying is that
the number of people who trust the opposition parties has actually dropped.
Yeah, my point is that a good number. In fact, if you take the three categories of people whose numbers cannot be added to either the NDC or MPP, the larger portion says that they are undecided.
Yes. Yeah, which is
my argument is that if the governing party is
losing ground, it should go to the opposition.
But that doesn't work that way. That science doesn't always work that way.
But that's what you would expect.
I understand that. Look, if opposition governing party is losing votes or losing popularity, and the opposition party that should be gaining is also stagnant, it simply means that
I think it's rather plays to the advantage of the opposition, because they, at least those who believe in them, put the government as an opportunity after 3 years to win, are still staying with them, and you are losing.
No, what I'm saying is, it means that both of them have a lot to catch up with. What I'm saying that if the governing party is actually losing, is losing votes, and you in opposition, presumably you should be gaining. What I'm saying is,
politics at the end of the day is a numbers game.
It's a numbers game.
That is my point. And you are the one losing. I'm not losing.
No, you are not losing, but you are not adding anything.
But you are not adding up.
You are not adding. The reason why I'm saying that you should be worried.
The vast majority of people are undecided.
The reason why I'm saying you should be worried,
you are losing.
The NDC should be worried. The reason why I'm saying NDC should be worried is, if you look at 2008, when MPP dropped, NDC gained by just 1 point. And you see how the election went. It went into third round. And that is even when you have even gained 1 percentage point. From there on, from 23, you maintain it up to 2017, 2019, you are still at 22%. That's my argument. You should be gaining. If you are stagnant, now you have about 19 people, 19% that says that they they are undecided. 19% say they are undecided. The 19%, this is government in power, as he himself said. This is government in power that incumbency where somebody in my constituency, I take Lambuse for instance, if somebody in Lambuse says I will not vote before my road is started, if government goes to do, you think the person will not vote? You are in the opposition. What are you bringing on board? First of all, you are not providing any alternatives that the undecided will switch or will move to you. If you are not providing anything, you look at all these years, all from 2017. Just mention one policy initiative or policy that NDC has brought forward.
They'll review the free SHS.
Review. What kind of review? If you say that's nebulous, you say you are review simply means
and they are organizing a people's manifesto. Have you not heard about
when they are stakeholders meeting?
The people's manifesto.
When you do an analysis of the NDC with regards to, I mean, if you are doing an analysis of a poll that was done now,
yes,
obviously they are in opposition. They don't have access to public funds to be able to do
exactly.
they are going to be assessed
based
on the back of what they have done.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
What they intend.
We will take a break.
That is why what are the policies?
Okay, let's get to it. We'll take a break. When I come back, we'll delve into the other issues. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. This is Press Conference right here on Citi TV. Sami Sedem and Aldo are still in the studio. We're having a discussion currently on the Manifesto and Afrobarometer scorecards of voter sentiments and how well the president has done in terms of evaluating his promises. Sami will have the last bite on this.
The CDD Afrobarometer, well, I want to side with Sedem. You know, you take a sample population of over 2,000 and you want it to be a representation.
More precisely. You can go through and see why. Over the
out of the voter population, after the 2016 election, 14 million, and we take 1,000 or 1,000 and what?
200.
2,400. Okay. And then you say it's a national representation.
Look, I disagree with both of them.
I
disagree with both of them.
I have my doubts, my disagreements over this, you know.
Sample size.
We all did research.
Sample size. If it's correctly
well done.
And even if it's nationwide, if they went to every part of this country, all
you don't need to go to everywhere.
How do? Let me have my
the political science research that almost accurately predicted the 2016 elections. How many?
It was really accurate, not almost. Very accurate. How many?
Oh, that they predicted that the president was going to win.
Sample size, yes, it is well done.
The number of seats the president was going to, MPP was going to win.
But those were done on constituency. We can't compare that to this.
And they was done. No,
it was also national. It was also national. It was also national. It was also national. It was also national.
But you don't take a sample size. A sample of having something as a national representation. I'm not down. I take it to the UK.
I have said that 2,400, if it is well done, representative enough.
Okay. I take it to the UK. Before their election, Boris Johnson and the Labour guy,
Corbyn.
The exit poll showed that indeed BJ was going to win. And these were done scientifically. You could tell that indeed this and this and this. And there was no margin of error compared to ours.
What do you mean? There's no research that you say there's no margin of error. What do you mean by this?
How do? We know how they do it outside. It's scientific.
The numbers are bigger.
The numbers are bigger.
Manifesto are not
they talk to a lot of people.
Okay.
No.
The
only difference between there and here is that they are objective in answering questions. Here, somebody may not be objective.
Oh, you think they? Oh no.
I'm telling you, that is very serious. No. That is a fact.
On election night,
it's very important. They are very objective when they are answering questions.
Like pretty much as our president said, Donald Trump shouldn't have been weighing. Did you see the polls?
Right,
if the people answer the questions
so then let's move on to the last issue. Let's move on to the last issue. Unfortunately,
you know what happened? What has come out of the Russian
we can't read your messages today because of a technical challenge that we are facing. But the last issue has got to do with the appointment of
he will not be convicted.
Guys, we've moved on. Last issue, appointment of Justice Eboa as Chief Justice. We won't play the excerpts we have for want of time. What would you say? It was a neck and neck race.
Yes.
Justice Eboa, Justice Doche.
Yes, I'm not a lawyer and I don't go to court, but my understanding is that both justices are very good.
They were all, at least we all saw them during the election petition.
Yes, exactly, very good. Unfortunately, one has to be chosen, and it fell on Justice Eniyaboa. But those who go to court actually say that this is a judge that is interested in the reforms in the judiciary.
Yes.
And so that's very important, considering what is happening in our legal system, where one Chief Justice says that under her...
Who's a conservative.
But this is a reformist. He is considered a reformist, and he is prepared to change things for our legal system to move forward. I think it's a good choice.
Okay. Say them.
Well, I think that his quality, the caliber, the quality that he brings to the bench is... to the position of Chief Justice is undeniable. You can't question it. I've had the opportunity to speak to people who, beyond even the qualification in terms of how many years he spent in the courts and in the practice.
11 years.
And what he's done. His private life, what I understand is that he's such a humble person.
Yeah.
He's had opportunities.
Chairman of FIFA's disciplinary committee.
FIFA.
I thought formally.
He's still.
Okay.
FIFA.
Yeah, and beyond discipline and ethics.
Ethics committee.
But I heard from someone who's closely associated with him who said that, look, there have been opportunities where he's been given tickets to fly first class, sometimes business, and he would choose to be in the economy because he says it's lonely.
Wow.
Being in those places. And for me, those are the things I look out for. The
humanness. Business class? Wow.
And
he's not a businessman.
Look at where he's come from to his education. Palm, the schools he's attended.
That's my only association with him. Went to a school in my hometown. How many on secondary school?
Wow.
In Asante, the elite institutions. So there's an individual who I believe that the majority of Ghanaians socially can identify with. But that said, there's also been a debate as to whether the president did injustice to Justice Duce.
Yes.
I think I heard a politician.
Yes. Inus Afseni said that he should have been Justice Duce.
Given that he was next senior. I think there are...
Because Duce is senior too.
Why?
But I heard they were called...
They explained
they went to understand, they went to High Court the same time.
You know the lawyers and their technicalities. If your name appears on the roll of lawyers first and the other one,
on the first day.
Yes, but that has never been... First of all, it's not even been the practice. It's not been the norm, much less to say that. I mean, the president's prerogative it is to decide who becomes the Chief Justice. There's no question of seniority. In fact, the most senior person right now on the bench is Julius Sansan. He was appointed to the Supreme Court in 2004. It was 4 years after that before Justice Enim and Duce came on the scene. And even aside from before Justice Sophia Kufu, the most senior person at the bench was William Atuguba. Okay. But before her, there was Justice Georgina Woods. And Justice Georgina Woods, even before
Georgina Woods was Pega.
Pega was acting Chief Justice. He was more senior. It was sidestep. But you can go all the way to the Justice I.K. Aban era. So first of all, we don't have practice on our side even to arrive at that conclusion. Except to others that it's possible that by the end of the year, I'm taking the future. By the end of the year, we may have just one female. The one woman on the Supreme bench.
There are three more.
They've been approved by Parliament, I know.
They have.
Edina is going on retirement.
Yes.
I thought 15
judges. All of them,
15. 11 of them were men, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Sammy will not get to have a bite of the issue.
My quick one. A lot of lawyers I've spoken to are very excited about Enime Watson. I don't know why, but
he's a reformist.
A lot of people hope that as someone whose daughter has been affected by this legal education,
you bring reforms.
Her daughter had to go and qualify in Gambia before coming to. She will bring reforms to the legal education so that can be opened up. Enjoy the rest of our programming. My name is Mensah Opoku. I had in the studio Samuel Africa Presidential Correspondent, Citi FM, Citi TV, and Sedem Ofori, Head of News Planning and Gathering at TV3. That's Media Journal, and Audu Mahama, Editor of the Custodian Newspaper. Enjoy the rest of our programming, and we draw down the curtain here.